At 3:17 a.m. local time, radar screens across the eastern Mediterranean suddenly lit up as multiple unidentified projectiles moved rapidly toward U.S. naval positions, signaling the beginning of a crisis few believed would ever unfold. Within minutes, defense officials confirmed that forces linked to Iran had launched a coordinated missile and drone operation targeting the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier strike group stationed in international waters, marking a dramatic escalation between Tehran and the United States. Air defense systems aboard the carrier activated immediately, intercepting several incoming threats in a tense display of military precision that briefly reassured commanders monitoring the situation. However, at least one projectile reportedly breached the outer defensive perimeter, sending shockwaves through global security circles and raising fears of a direct state-to-state confrontation. Tehran described the action as a defensive response to mounting regional pressure, while Washington condemned it as an unacceptable act of aggression that demanded consequences. As news of the naval confrontation spread, financial markets reacted instantly. Oil prices surged, and investors rushed toward safe assets, reflecting widespread anxiety about a possible wider war. But the crisis did not remain confined to the sea for long. Within hours, missile alerts sounded across major cities in Israel, as Iranian projectiles were detected heading toward strategic locations, dramatically widening the scope of the confrontation. Israeli air defense systems engaged rapidly, intercepting many of the incoming missiles in midair, a response that officials described as highly effective under extreme pressure. Even so, the psychological impact on civilians was immediate, with families rushing to shelters and emergency services placed on maximum alert. World leaders quickly called for restraint, warning that further escalation could destabilize the entire Middle East and threaten global energy routes. In Washington, senior defense officials convened emergency meetings at the Pentagon, assessing response options designed to deter further attacks while avoiding uncontrolled escalation. Shortly thereafter, U.S. forces initiated what they described as targeted precision strikes against Iranian military command and coordination facilities believed to be linked to the earlier missile launches. According to preliminary briefings, these operations focused on strategic infrastructure rather than civilian areas, a distinction officials emphasized repeatedly in an effort to underline proportionality. Then came the development that stunned observers across the globe. Iranian state media reported that Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei had been killed during one of the U.S. strikes on a high-security compound, creating an immediate and profound political shockwave. Crowds gathered in major Iranian cities following the announcement, with scenes of grief, anger, and uncertainty reflecting the magnitude of the moment. Regional allies condemned the strike, warning that the removal of Iran's highest authority could trigger unpredictable consequences across existing alliances. Inside Iran, senior officials moved swiftly to reassure the public that governance structures would continue to function, seeking to project stability during a period of extraordinary tension. Meanwhile, the United Nations convened an Emergency Security Council session, where diplomats urged de-escalation and a return to dialogue before the crisis spiraled further. Energy analysts warned that prolonged instability could disrupt shipping routes through the Strait of Hormuz, a vital artery for global oil supplies, increasing economic pressure worldwide. Military analysts described the sequence of events as one of the most serious direct exchanges between major regional powers in decades, underscoring the fragile balance that had been shattered. At the same time, reports began to surface that back-channel diplomatic communications were quietly reopening in neutral territories, offering a small but significant sign that dialogue had not completely collapsed. European leaders emphasized the urgent need for restraint, arguing that miscalculation in such a volatile environment could lead to consequences far beyond the region. Across global capitals, security levels were reassessed, embassies reviewed contingency plans, and intelligence agencies monitored developments hour by hour.
For ordinary citizens watching from around the world, the crisis served as a stark reminder of how quickly geopolitical tensions can escalate from rhetoric to real confrontation. Yet, amid the uncertainty, some analysts suggested that the shock of such rapid escalation might compel rival powers to reconsider the costs of further military action. Markets remained volatile, but diplomatic channels, however fragile, continued to operate behind the scenes, reflecting the persistent global desire to avoid a full-scale regional war. As leadership transitions inside Iran moved forward and international mediators increased efforts to calm tensions, cautious optimism emerged that direct confrontation might give way to renewed negotiations. Still, the path ahead remains uncertain, shaped by strategic calculations, domestic pressures, and the unpredictable dynamics of power politics. History may ultimately judge this moment not only by the missiles launched or the strikes conducted, but by whether global leaders chose escalation or restraint in the hours that followed. For now, the world watches, waits, and hopes that diplomacy will prevail over destruction, and that even in the darkest hours of confrontation, a pathway back to stability can still be found.